following takes place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FBC Radio Live. It's Tuesday, October the 5th. That's right. We are well into the month of October. And we're well into the NFL season. Yes. We're coming off week 4. Obviously, the big storyline being the return of Tom Brady to New England. And, of course, last night concluded with the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to bring in my co-host, Mr. John Sapichetti. John, I know you can't see anything, but did you see enough of Sunday's action to be entertained?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just to update people, because I'm sure everybody's really concerned about me, but I had my second cataract surgery yesterday, so I can see now the TV and distance without glasses, but I can't see anything that's within 3 feet of me. I mean, you texted me earlier this morning, and Lord knows what I text back, so, I can't really see up close. But sure, I was able to enjoy all the games on Sunday, last night's game as well with my new second favorite quarterback, Justin Herbert, doing his job. But the game Sunday night, Ian, it was so intense. Like, I was rooting for the Patriots simply because it would help the Packers if Tampa Bay lost. But I was also rooting for Brady because I'm Brady over Patriots. There was a lot of mixed emotions for me, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. So, but it was such an intense game, and I could just see that Tom Brady is so relieved that it's over now, right? Because throughout the entire game, he just didn't look himself until he needed to be in the big moments, which is, par for the course of the last 20 plus years. But that was an intense game in that sense. It almost felt like you couldn't breathe watching it. I can only imagine what it was like playing in it.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. He obviously early on he was anxious, and look, I don't blame him. I mean, if there's very few things that will put him off and get him off center, and it didn't put him off much. I mean, let's be honest. This is just at the end of the day, he had actually a really good game considering the circumstances and the fact that it was pouring rain. I kind of wish it was the weather was cleaner, because I have a feeling we could have had a pretty big shootout, to be honest with you, based on how certainly how Tampa Bay's defense was injured and I don't know, just there were opportunities and there were points left on the board, partly because of, again, early on he was a little, like I said, he had the yips. You could see a couple balls sail on him, which, again, chalk that up to the rain, chalk it up to some nerves. Like I said, I was like, okay, he's obviously, and I don't blame him, coming back after 20 years and playing for the first time. So, so yeah, it was definitely an entertaining game. I almost wish, in hindsight, considering the Patriots loss, I really wish Antonio Brown would have come down with that touchdown pass to give him one in this game. And really, it would have been just a beautiful, beautiful touchdown pass. I mean, it was such a great throw. And I'm not putting any blame on Antonio Brown. He's going to come out with that 99 out of 100 times. But that would have been a nice little capper for him because, of course, I'm sitting here thinking towards the end of the game, I'm like, all right, at this point, I kind of want Brady to go down and throw a touchdown pass and then Mac Jones to lead a game-winning touchdown drive. That would be perfect. I would go home, I would go to bed happy. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. We got a field goal, and then obviously a doink off the left upright. And look, I mean, it was an entertaining game. If Brady really feels that way, I'm right with him. I'm so glad it's over with. I'm so glad that, we talked a lot the last couple of weeks about the Brady and Belichick relationship, and for them to just sit together for 30 minutes or whatever it was, 25, 30 minutes after the game in the Bucs locker room. It was, I think that kind of sums up what their relationship and how they handled this whole thing. They just looked at it like, no, they don't care. They don't, Bill's not going to do anything to appease the public. I mean, that's the thing. Like, people get all bent out of shape and people talking about, oh, did you see how quick the handshake was? Well, I don't care. Bill doesn't care. He obviously cares more about talking to him after the game. And I'm glad that happened.
Right.
And people caught wind of that because it really probably nipped in the butt a lot of wacky conspiracy theorists that would have come out of that game saying, "Oh, did you see how quick the handshake was?" You know, it would be like examining the film once again. Let's see the handshake, see the eye contact, blah blah blah, and it just would have been nonsense. The bottom line is, those two guys have a lot of respect for each other. I never felt that their relationship was this battle of the stubborn old. It just wasn't that. I think I've addressed that more than one occasion on this, so I'm not going to rehash it. But I thought it was interesting that Bill made a specific note and Tom too about shooting down some of the narratives surrounding their relationship as just flat out false.
Well, of course they're gonna deny.
Well,
it,
no. Okay. Hold on.
Okay, but
Okay. Hold on.
Okay, so I get one sentence.
No, I'll let you
ahead.
respond, because I was going to address that. Of course, you're going to say, well, of course they're going to say that. Well, the problem with that is we go down this rabbit hole of, well, of course, no. I'll take their word over a guy that has been continually questioned his source of information. And I'm not saying, like I said, I understand anonymous sources, but there have been far too many instances where his claims or his stories have been flat out wrong. And at a certain point, you have to question the credibility. And just because a bunch of people come out and say, "Oh, great job, Seth. Good work, man," doesn't mean it's good. And I think,
Okay, but
go ahead.
here's the thing. I think some of it was true. Some of it was exaggerated. That's what happens when people write third person or second person books. We're not going to get Brady or Belichick or anybody quoted on it. It's anonymous sources. This is what happens, which is fine. I don't think it was all, I'm going to use a really old term here, hunky-dory with them down the stretch of their relationship. I don't maybe think it was as bad as a lot of people wanted to paint it. But let's not forget, Tom Brady this summer said 90% of what I say is what I'm really thinking.
Yeah,
so
but
I'm going to hold him to that, so I can understand that. I don't.
You're talking about press conferences and going up and answering questions after, standard questions after the game.
Right?
Well, again, this is a different situation.
They're tremendous respect for each other. They would not have accomplished what they did without one another. I still think it's more Brady than Belichick, and I think that was illustrated Sunday night more than ever.
Yeah, but
if you flip the quarterbacks on those two teams, the Patriots win that game. If Brady's quarterbacking the Patriots, they win that game because they would not need to take a 56-yard field goal attempt because he would have got them closer. I mean, and again,
sure.
I think secretly I'm a bigger Brady fan than you are, if you can believe that. It's just because I have so much trust in him, and I really push back. And looking at the game as much as anything else, he outplayed Mac Jones.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. What I'm saying is, I think at this point, the author that has spent a clear has apparently been so plugged in with an organization has only third or fourth hand knowledge of all the situations, which again, you can go down the list, and like it happened within 10 minutes of his little promotional tour last week. These things got shot down, and it wasn't just, "Oh, I don't believe this." Well, no. The typical response, kind of like what you went down, was, "Well, of course Brady and Belichick are going to say that." Well, of course they're going to say that because it's true. I mean, they've given me no reason not to believe that was the case. Everything we know about the situation now is the case, and we look at what Seth Wickersham put out, and it's like he claimed that, "Oh, Jimmy G got locked out of TB12." Well, that didn't happen. He claimed that Brady stormed into Robert Kraft's office to demand a trade. Well, that didn't happen. And the list goes on and on. So at a certain point, you have to question the credibility of the guy that's apparently so plugged into the Patriots organization, he can't get a single person, not a single
I want to look at this more I want to look at it more macro than micro, right? So I just, to me, it would be almost impossible for three guys to not at some point have some problems over a 20-year period. I mean, we're talking about the greatest quarterback ever.
Real quick,
and a great owner. They're going to have some
problems versus marriage like spats over 20 years is different than having problems, and different from what this entire relationship was portrayed as since 3 or 2 years ago when this happened. So there's a huge gap. There's a huge gap between those two things. So that's where I think we have a huge disagreement. So you're assuming one thing, but drawing conclusions and giving credibility to something that I just don't think is has any credibility.
I think you're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is they had problems. It's to the point that what he's brought up in the book, I don't know, or I don't really believe. But the point of it is,
define problems, though. Define. Is it
it's just normal for three
okay, I wouldn't say that's problems. Egos. It's just relationships. It's a 20-year-old relationship.
But not all marriages. Yeah, but that's going to happen, right?
Okay.
So it's not. Look, I mean, I think Montana and Walsh had probably as big a problems with each other.
Well,
and it wasn't really Walsh who got rid of one.
Does problem equal Belichick didn't want Brady? Is that where you're getting to?
Because they could have easily kept him.
Well,
I still think they could have easily kept him. Look, and where was the plan afterwards with Cam Newton being the booby prize?
But see, right there leads credit to the fact that that Belichick wanted Brady and wanted him to stay.
What did they do for 3.5 months after Brady signed with Tampa and they signed Cam Newton? What was the quarterback solution at that point?
What were they going to do? Go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers? You know, okay, so
something besides Cam Newton.
What else was out there? I mean, you're acting like there's just, quarterbacks growing on trees out there, and I mean, clearly by the looks of it, they're not, because like only about half the league have good enough quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'm talking starters, not even backups here. So like the quarterback shortage is out there. It's certainly out there, but like we've talked about, okay, in 2017. If Bill Belichick, if someone told you that Tom Brady was going to be playing at the level he is at 44, Bill Belichick signs him to a 5-year deal, and he's here in New England right now. But to Bill Belichick's credit, he stayed consistent, and he said, "Look, I'm going to bet on Tom Brady not being the same guy at 43, 44," and he was wrong. That's fine.
Right.
That's fine. That doesn't indicate there was some massive problem and he wanted to push him out. No, he was just playing the odds, and Tom was already playing with quote unquote borrowed time. So at that point, Bill Belichick made a decision that he thought was best for the team. And if you ask him, behind closed doors, was that wrong? Well, yeah, in hindsight it was. But at that point, you can't fix that issue in 2019, because at that point you can't give Tom exactly what he wants and still be able to build the team around him.
You don't think a 2-year contract going into 2019 would have got it done?
They offered him a 2-year contract.
That's what Jeff Howe says. Other reporters say no. So whatever the case is.
Okay, so now there's less credibility. So again,
no, I'm just saying
I'll take Jeff
Howe over Adam Schefter or whoever. I mean, so like this. See, here's the thing with all this stuff is most of this stuff now gets sourced by one source, right? Even reporters.
Hold on. So, regardless of whether or not let me clarify. I'm not hinging my argument on whether or not they're
a certain
offering
reporter because they want to fit the narrative. So, like Jeff Howard said, they offered him a 2-year, $53 million contract.
The main point of my argument has nothing to do with whether or not they offered him a contract. Let's pretend like they didn't offer him a contract. What I'm saying is their ability to offer him the same things that Tampa could at that point. You couldn't do that in 29 based on the decisions that they made 2 years prior. So again, Bill Belichick saw it. Well, you're only going to get in 2017, you're only going to get a couple more years of Tom Brady being an elite level, which based on the entire history of the NFL was probably a smart decision. And at the end of the day, he was wrong, because Brady has, again, exceeded every single expectation ever put on a quarterback at this point. And Bill Belichick, I'm sure, would be happy to admit that he's wrong. It's just unfortunate that by then, Tom was already, okay, I'm ready to move on. They couldn't do much more outside of that 2-year contract offer if it did happen, because they were already kind of in cap hell. And we saw that last year going into this year. So again, decisions made in 2017, right or wrong, happened. That doesn't mean Bill Belichick forced Tom Brady out. It didn't mean that they hated each other so much they had to separate. No. And that's the storyline. That's the narrative that's been built around all this. And Seth Wickersham's stuff seems to support that and push that. And that's my issue. Because to me, that narrative just doesn't exist. It's out there for the media to soak up. And they were so disappointed.
This is the Rashomon theory, right? So you've got Seth Wickersham, who has everybody within the Patriots organization hating each other, that Belichick, and I'm exaggerating here, but Belichick, Brady, and Kraft wouldn't acknowledge each other if they were in the same room, which that's obviously false. But then you've got people on the other side who were saying there was never any issue or any problem. It was just a mutual agreement that it was time to move on. And I just think that there's more nuance to that, right? Than just picking one side or the other. That's the Rashomon theory. Somewhere in between these two extremes lies the truth. So again, I think that at some point, I think Brady wanted out at some point as well. Why not? What he did last year, going to a losing organization and winning a Super Bowl, winning 3 games on the road, and then beating the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, that is like more than the icing on the cake, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the icing on the cake. It's 3 layers of icing on the cake. Like any idiot that doesn't think he's the greatest quarterback ever, or maybe the greatest professional athlete or in terms of team sport athletics in this country, is foolish, right? Like that just blew it out of the water. And again, I think the one thing I want to question on Belichick is, okay, so going into 19, you pretty much knew things were done, but maybe you reset plan, right? Because you drafted Garoppolo in 14. However it happened that they had to trade him, happened in 17. So after that, maybe you reset it, right? Because now you have a young quarterback develop, and did they think Jarrett Stidham was the guy? Maybe they did. Maybe they thought Jarrett Stidham could be Jimmy Garoppolo, and then they could develop him, and that's obviously not been the case.
Well, I mean, they could have also looked at it and said, well, also, I do feel that the Patriots, Kraft especially, and of course Belichick, probably felt that there was still a chance to a certain extent of trying to get a deal done. Obviously, Tom, in hindsight, seems to have already made up his mind, which again is his prerogative. Because anyone who questions that, I'll sit there and say, okay, how many times have you stayed within a job for 20 years, the same job?
Right.
And exactly. I guarantee you, not too many people are going to hold their hands up high because through either layoffs or just, who wants to stick in the same place for 20 years? So the fact that happened, great, awesome. And then Tom decided, hey, it's the time, it's the right time. At his age, like he's not in a position to go through any sort of rebuild. And as we know with the Patriots, a rebuild basically means your ceiling is the AFC Championship game. I think he looked at it and, like I said, made up his mind. He felt that, he wasn't going to be able to, based on certainly the Patriots' financials, wasn't going to get that type of support around him when they, at the time in 2019 after that season. And that's fine. I mean, the Patriots probably were looking at it too once they realized that Tom was gone. It's like, well, you don't have much of an option. I mean, they didn't have much money based on obviously the dead money. You were going to have money from Tom Brady on the books one way or the other. If he was there, if he was not. He left, that $13 or $14 million was still on the hook. $9 million still hanging over their heads from Antonio Brown. That came, during the 2019 season screw up. A decision made to get rid of him, all that stuff. All of a sudden, you're looking at $24 million on the books for 2 players in 2020 with no snaps for the Patriots. And then you take
won a Super Bowl in Tampa.
That's
what
fine.
Makes it even
well,
that makes it even tougher, right? Because you're watching the first week of February and you're watching him throwing a touchdown pass to Antonio Brown, and you're like, oh Lord.
Well, you know me. I think the Patriots shouldn't have cut him, and and I think maybe that could have kept Brady in New England if Brown was part of all this. So, but that I agree with. But for that, the situation going into 2020 season, and I would never think that Bill would sit there and say we're going to throw this season. I don't think they did at all. But what I'm saying is sometimes, like, and I this was the problem with a lot of the AFC East teams throughout the years. They were never self-aware of where they were as a team. So what they would do is they would go out and overpay some veteran, thinking, okay, we're just behind the Patriots. We just need a few more guys. Well, guess what? They weren't. And all of a sudden they wasted a bunch of money on veteran players and set their franchise back several years. And all of a sudden they can never keep up with the Patriots. If they had just sat back and realized, hey, we can't go and waste money on this guy or this guy. Let's just take our lumps now and grow slowly, because there's no way we're going to catch the Patriots. I think that's what the Patriots said. In a way, they looked at it, it was like, look, we're losing these guys to free agency. We're losing these guys to opt-outs. Based on what we have under center and who's out there, there's not a lot of paths to success. So why needlessly waste money when, especially this year, knowing you had a bunch of cap relief and you can start rebuilding that team. So I don't know if it was so much Bill Belichick being lost without a plan as it was. I think they looked at the situation based on, okay, we're not going to have Tom. Whenever they realized this was going to happen, whether it was middle of the season, end of the season, beginning of the season, I don't know. They looked at it and it didn't change the outlook of what 2020 was going to be. And that was before they learned about COVID and all the opt outs and all that. So, I think privately, Bill probably said, look, we're gonna do what we can this season and try to rebuild that way. And I think that was the smart thing to do because I think they're far better set up now. I mean, Matthew Judon looks like an incredible defensive player right now. One of the biggest impact players right now on defense, especially for the Patriots. Mac Jones.
He was probably the second best defensive player on the field on Sunday night.
Oh, easily.
Vita Vea looked like a man playing with children out there. I mean, it's just like he looked like Bane, right? I mean, he was just like tossing people aside like they were rag dolls, literally. That guy's incredible. I mean, I think me, you, and 8 other dudes could probably play defense with him because he takes on so many blockers and opens up lanes for people to get back. Whatever Shaq Barrett or anyone else make it, they should give 10% to Vita Vea. He makes everything possible. I mean, that one play where he took 2 offensive linemen and just tossed them. I mean, that was just, oh my Lord, that was incredible. Yeah, no, I know. I like Judon a lot. No, I think they're headed in the right direction. This looks like a good draft with Mac Jones and Barrymore, I think is, going to be a really good player. I'm still, I mean, I know we're going to disagree on this. I'm still not sold on Mac. I mean, it's 4 games.
I'm not sold on him either, but I think he's heading in the right direction, though. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Again, I think he's smart. I think he's invested. All of that is great, but you do need some athletic ability or some ability throwing the football at a higher level, maybe. But no, he can be an outstanding quarterback. There's no question about it. Maybe I'm just being biased here. When we got to the draft last year, I really wanted the Patriots to straight up and take Justin Fields, who I think is going to be a better quarterback than Mac Jones. We'll see what happens. Matt Nagy, with every day, may be ruining that kid for all we know. Well, but that's just my own personal opinion. I think Mac's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and look, I mean, anyone who's making definitive claims one way or the other with Mac Jones, and I've seen it on both sides, it's outrageous because it's 4 games. But
exactly.
But if you want to look at trends, I saw again, I'm biased because I do think that at the height of their abilities, a pocket passer is better than a athletic running quarterback. Because again, I think it goes back to the root and the foundation of quarterback play. And I think if you're a better pocket passer, an elite pocket passer, you possess a lot of those most important qualities, in my opinion. So I will always take the elite pocket passer over the elite running quarterback.
I'll take.
Yeah, well, I'm not, and I'm not saying I don't like the other, but I'm saying like, okay, obviously Brady versus Rodgers. Well, I'm taking Brady. Although again, Rodgers is unique because he's not necessarily a running quarterback. He can run, but he also has elite pocket ability. I don't think anyone's better than Brady in the pocket, but that again is something I've hammered home quite a bit. But so to me, Justin Fields, I like Justin Fields. I really like Mac Jones. He's shown quite a bit. Again, I mean, he was a little. There's certain things that he's going to have to develop over time, but that's exactly it. It's time. It's been 4 weeks. Yeah. Anyone sitting there saying like he's a bust or he's not good? I mean, I saw your boy Nick Wright making claims that, well, this tells us all we need to know that. Well, guess what? All we need to know is Nick Wright is not an authority on quarterback play. Let's just put it that way. I think I do think
that if Brady was the quarterback, the Patriots would be at minimum 3-1 right now.
Oh yeah. Look, I mean,
maybe 4-0 for all we know.
I'll put it this way. Like, I mean, I hate playing the ifs and buts game, but a field goal that slides slightly into the right, it gives you a much higher percent. I'm not going to say guarantee because Tom Brady still has plenty of time left. It gives you a higher percent chance of winning that game. And you wipe out a Damian Harris fumble in week 1. The Patriots team is 3-1. Now, again,
they're close.
This is the difference between being a pretty good team and an elite team. These, like you said, they should be 3-1, but they're 1-3. If this was Tom Brady, they should be 3-1 or 4-0, and they're 4-0. That's the difference.
Right. Exactly.
So, these little things like that. I mean, we can sit there and say they should be 3-1, but it's not a great 3-1. It's you're barely winning these games. You want to see eventually. Again, it doesn't have to be next week. You want to see some gradual growth. I mean, they're still making too many mistakes, like boneheaded pre-snap penalties.
Yep.
That penalty on Matthew Slater was just it was. I agree. It should have been a penalty. I don't think there's any disagreement on that part. It was odd to see that from Matthew Slater. I thought he could have
Right.
definitely made a better effort to try to get back into the field of play.
Yep.
So, I think those mistakes are going to get cleaned up. Um, Obviously, I think Mac Jones is going to get better the more and more he plays, and I think we've already seen that. I mean, in the last 2 games, he's thrown 92 passes, like that.
Not good.
Well, no,
It
I
was
think
by
that is
necessity.
good. I think
Well,
that
it
is
good
good
you're getting
because
anytime it's like anything else, more passes, more reps,
exactly.
et cetera. But you don't want to put him in harm's way because he's been getting hit a lot.
Well, he's also
and again,
exactly.
you couldn't run against Tampa. You
Well,
could not run against Tampa on Sunday. I think
the Patriots can't run against anyone. Let's be honest.
They can't,
here.
let alone
They can't, they can't run against
Vita
anyone.
Vea in the Great Wall of China. I mean, that was no one's running against Tampa. I mean, good luck with that because that guy just clogs everything up. But yeah, so I mean, no, I like some of the things that we've been able to see with Mac Jones. I would have gone for it on 4th and 3 because again, even if you make that field goal, again, a 56-yard field goal in those inclement conditions, who's getting the football back with 50 seconds left and 2 timeouts and just needs a field goal to win. Like, have we ever seen him do that before? I don't know, maybe 100 times in the last 20 years. And I'm not being hyperbolic. So, like, that's the best case scenario. He makes the field goal and you go for it. Now, again, and I don't want to beat on Mac Jones, but Brady gets you closer.
Oh, sure.
But again,
Tom
we're talking
Brady.
about a 44-year-old legend against a 23-year-old guy who could be his son. Right?
Yeah,
so literally, Tom Brady could be Mac Jones' father.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my big point. But he can get to that point where maybe Belichick will trust him more in 4th and 3. You pick up the first down, now you bleed clock, and instead of a 56-yard field goal attempt, maybe you kick a 46-yarder, which we have confidence Nick Folk is going to make. So it's just those little things. But it's a work in progress. What they have to do Sunday, obviously, is just go in and beat the hell out of Houston, a really good team to face right now. Get that done and try to build something there. But there's some good things that we saw, and you're right about Matthew Judon. Man, that guy is a stud. Whenever you can, just sign free agents from the Baltimore Ravens because it seems like even Zadarius Smith, who's out for maybe the rest of the season with the Packers, he's been a great find for the last 2 years. Just sign guys off the Ravens. They usually play pretty well. Yeah,
and look, I mean, I can see on both ends or sides, when it comes to the decision in New England. I don't think it necessarily indicates any sort of distrust in Mac Jones, which I think is what a lot of people went to immediately. I just think it was a decision in the moment. And look, Bill makes these decisions, and I'm going to defer to him when it comes to that. And unfortunately, it didn't work out, and it barely didn't work out. I mean, just think about how narratives work. If that kick was about 3 inches to the right, you know what I mean? It's a whole different conversation we're having. So,
his legacy was built on Scott Norwood missing a 47-yard field goal by a foot.
Yeah.
I mean, if that field goal is a foot and a half more to the left, the Bills win the Super Bowl, and Bill Belichick, the hell of a defensive coordinator, probably still gets hired by Cleveland because I think those decisions came pretty quick. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the weird thing about football. We've got these gigantic guys who are incredible athletes going out there and literally risking their lives, and then it comes down to some field goal kicker, which is kind of really there's no other sport that does that. I mean, you have a closer in baseball that has to hold the 1-run lead, but at least he's a pitcher who at some point had been a starter or whatever. And the field goal kicker, not many of those guys would have played any other position in football.
Well, that's fine. See, I don't have a problem with field. I know some people are kind of anti-field goal and all that. Like I think it's exactly, and I'd buy it because I'm definitely into it. But just how again how it's part of the game and all that stuff. And let me actually, that reminds me, and I made this comment on Twitter. I'm going to completely change directions here because I still get a kick out of people pissing and moaning about overtime. Is it me, or does it seem like every single overtime, in every overtime, it never ends on the first possession? Like, since like 2018, people have been, complaining about how the Chiefs didn't get a chance in overtime, and it's funny to me because like people wanted to change the overtime rules, and my thing was always, well, about 50% of the time, it doesn't end on the first possession anyways. And we've seen that play out. We've seen it. We've had, what, 3 or 4 overtime games this season already, and none of them have ended on the first possession. In fact, most of them go multiple possessions before they end.
Well, you could kick a field goal, and then the other team at least gets a chance to match that or exceed that with the new rules.
Well, no, but see, I don't agree with changing the rules now. I think they're fine the way they are.
What I'm saying is, in the past, just the last several years, but in the past, the team that scored first won. Now, if you score a touchdown first, you win. I mean, if I'm playing you and I kick a field goal in overtime, you at least get the possession of the ball.
Oh, for sure, which is fine.
So you can match that. So that's why you're going to see, maybe multiple possessions in overtime. I mean, I don't like the rule, but we're not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that.
Well,
I don't think there's any other sport that, like in baseball, the top of the 10th inning, a team scores, the game's not over, the home team gets a chance.
Well, that's a different sport, though. I mean, but here's the thing. It's like,
we're awarding a team based on a flip of a coin. Which
no, we're not. No, we're not. No, again, this go. See, that would be true if oftentimes these teams lost on the first possession. Then it would essentially be determined by a flip of a coin. But the point is, it doesn't. A lot of these times,
you don't know that going into overtime.
Okay.
I mean, if I win the coin toss and go down and score,
we don't know what the score is going to be going into games, anyways. I mean, what do we know going into games?
I'm pretty close. I said that Patriots game was going to be closer.
Well, that's true. But
no, I know.
Well, what we're seeing though is surely competitive. Like, if you're playing defense, you have a chance. That's the point. Like, people talk about, oh, well, you're on defense, you have a chance. The Kansas City Chiefs had plenty of chances. They had 3 opportunities to stop the Patriots on third down and force them to kick a field goal, and they couldn't do it. That would have given them an offensive chance. The point is, like, these games don't end on just whoever wins the coin snap, which again is what a lot of people were, implying. Which the evidence, and based on what we've seen, certainly this season, suggests that is so far from the truth, and that's true. Like, so
logically, you have an advantage if you win the coin toss, right? I mean, it's just you have the ball.
You have an advantage if you have a better team. I mean, look.
We can agree that the Chiefs and Patriots were both pretty good teams in 2018. It's not like a lot of these overtimes end up being teams that are really like.
But what kind of advantage is third and long? You know what I mean?
Oh no.
That's what I'm saying. So so the Patriots winning that coin flip wasn't necessarily an advantage. Their advantage came at quarterback because they had a guy who was going to come up and make those plays during those situations. So, like,
but we never saw Patrick Mahomes in overtime.
We saw him during the game. He had plenty of time to score more points. The point is that's not being unfair. That's not being unfair to the other team. That's just how football works. And based on what we've seen a number of games, again, winning the coin toss really means nothing because, like, the percentages break out to be essentially favoring the team. It doesn't matter, really, is what it comes down to. So, like, people want to sit there and create this this narrative that there's this unfair advantage. It's really not. It's football. Like, you're on defense. People tell me all the time, oh, it's a team game, 53 men on the roster, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, guess what? The defense makes up part of those 53 men. When they're on the field, they have an opportunity because guess what? They can create a turnover. They can stop the other team. The other team could start, the Patriots could have started on their own 1-yard line. They could have gained 98 yards. And still, the Chiefs could have had an opportunity to go down and score and win the game because all they had to do was hold them to a field goal. So I don't buy this, oh, they didn't have a chance, it's an unfair advantage. No, there's a chance. Play football and make plays. If the Chiefs had won the toss and scored, would you say the same thing? Absolutely. Okay. Because I've been very consistent about this overtime rule for a very long time. Because all of a sudden you start. Well, what are you going to change it to? Is it going to be college? Absolutely not. College overtime rules suck.
No. Like, one possession each, and then if it's tied, next 4 wins.
Okay, but that's essentially what we're getting now. Like, if you're a team that goes into overtime and cannot stop a team from scoring, why do you deserve another opportunity? Like, you shouldn't be rewarded for not being able to play effectively.
Okay, so you've got a 9-9 baseball game going to the top.
This isn't baseball. This is football.
I get that. I'm just trying to make a point. And I always push back when people say you can't make cross-sport references. But the team scores in the top of the 10th. The game's not over. It's an offensive game. We do admit that football right now is geared to the offense.
But defense can create scores, and defense can end drives. So what happens? You can't, like, if someone makes a diving catch in center field, the inning doesn't end with just one out. You can do that in football. Like you can have them have one snap, create a turnover. All of a sudden, you have the ball. That doesn't happen in baseball.
I don't like the rule. You like it, that's fine. I don't like the one game wild card in baseball. I think that's
I think that's we can agree on that. I hate that because
what I would do is look
make it a best of three at least.
Or what I would do, I get even more creative, Ian. I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, so I'm just fine. They won the division with 107 wins. If I was an LA Dodger fan, 106 wins and you're playing in the wild card, that's what happened. You lost the division. What I would do is that I have the two wild card teams. The higher seeded one would have to win one game. The lower seeded team would have to win two games. Kind of like what the NBA does. Mm-hmm. So Red Sox actually are the highest seeded team than the Yankees. They'd have two opportunities to beat the Yankees. The Yankees would only have one. So that would make it, or just go 2 out of 3. I agree with that. And everybody goes, well, it is incredible, but the Dodgers are 15, 16 games ahead of the Cardinals in the standings. So what the hell was the regular season for?
Yeah, exactly.
One game. So, and especially in that sport where the Orioles can take 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox, and that happens in that sport. But no, we can disagree on that. But I think it's again, you absolutely defense has an opportunity to make a stop. And look, what Brady did in that overtime was just ridiculous. I mean, that was just like, I don't know. That may have been I don't know. At some point, we're gonna have to maybe power rank his 10 greatest achievements, and that's gonna be in there, right? I mean, on the road.
Yeah, but also at the same time, that might not even make it. If you think about it,
we may not need. We need 20.
That's like saying like, oh, that's definitely a top 10 Seinfeld episode. Then you start thinking about all the Seinfeld episodes. You're like, oh crap, maybe that isn't based on just everything else, So
Steven Spielberg's top 10 movies. Like, okay, I've got like 15 of them or 12 days here. Yeah.
I was gonna say I'll do your obligatory Daniel Day-Lewis reference right here. I'll say top 10 movies, and you know what? With that, we were supposed to do our quarterback power rankings. We just don't have time. We'll do that tomorrow.
We never do. We always run out of time, but that's okay because we're both very passionate.
That's fine, and we're going to end on a positive note. We disagreed on a lot today, but we'll agree. We'll end with these positive thoughts about baseball overtime and Daniel Day-Lewis and Seinfeld and all those other things. So thank you very much for hanging in there with us. As you can see, I didn't even mention on the screen, I have my win-loss record for my picks this past week, which you can stare at and whatever and judge me for. But tomorrow we'll kind of, I guess, cover the rest of everything we wanted to talk about. And of course, do our quarterback power rankings, which should be fun. So have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your Tuesday. Head over to fullpresscoverage.com and check out all the great work coming out there. And of course, give us a follow on Twitter at FBC Radio Live. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.